Tonight, it's man versus gorilla in The Flash, and spoiler alert, gorillas are much stronger than men. Justice League Dark goes full Scooby-Doo as we investigate a haunted house with the gang. And someone needs to get the Scarecrow an orthodontist because, dear Lord, does the Batman ruin his jaw. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 65 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and it's just a regular week. I got better. For anyone who watched last week's episode, I was sick as a dog and none of you gave me well wishes, but I got better anyway. So, joke's on you. Anyway, don't really want to waste too much time beforehand because I got a lot to talk about in terms of a couple event books, and also this is the last time that Andrea Sorrentino is doing the art for iVampire, and if you have been watching the show at all, you should know what a crushing blow that is to me. And I talk about that probably a bit too long. But regardless, let me just tell you the comics that are coming out this week. This week, we have the number 14 issues of Batman the Dark Knight, Superman, Red Lanterns, Aquaman, The Flash, The Fury of Firestorm, The Savage Hawkman, All-Star Western, Teen Titans, iVampire, and Justice League Dark. Additionally, we have the number 5 issue of Batman Incorporated, the one where it's an alternate timeline and things are all bad. The number 2 issue of Talon, getting further into that new series, and the number 4 and final issue of Phantom Lady and Doll Man, which, spoiler, just ties into a larger thing, because they're doing the Avengers thing, where every book ends with, I want you to join the Avengers Initiative. But it's not Avengers, because this is a DC podcast after all. Anyway, rambling over, let's go ahead and jump into the event comics, leading off with Superman's Hell on Earth. Superman number 14, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Kenneth Rocafort. This is the next part of Hell on Earth, following up after Superboy and then Supergirl, number 14 of each. And this issue picks up with Lois coming to Clark Kent's store, saying like, hey, Clark, I know you're in there. Can we talk? Like, you stormed out of the office last issue. Which, again, last issue was the whole thing with the Kryptonian dragon thing showing up. Anyway, Clark goes over, he opens up the door, and lets Lois in. The entire place is a wreck because Jimmy, for whatever reason, is still living in Clark's apartment. And she's like, hey, so, Clark, maybe, I don't know, go back and get your job again? Like, tell him, oopsie, I made a mistake, and make your way back in there. And he's like, oh yeah? Why should I? I was standing up for truth, justice, and the American way. Like, I'm not gonna go out there and peddle some crappy entertainment stuff. I'm here for news. And Lois is like, dude, why are you so pissed off about this? Like, we're friends. I'm trying to help you. And he's like, oh, friends, huh? Well, maybe a good friend would tell me that you're moving in with your boyfriend of just a few weeks. And Lois is like, oh, okay, we're going there. First off, I don't even know how you knew that. And Superman's like, yeah, I don't really have a good explanation as to how I know that either. But she's like, either way, we're still friends. But we are literally friends. I want you to understand that part, Clark, that we are not anything more than that. And she's then points out like, oh, and don't even get me started on significant others. I've seen the way you've been acting. You've clearly got a girl in your life. And he's like, what do you mean, Wonder Woman? I never said nothing about what do you mean? So then, as they're arguing, in through the door, as we saw at the end of Supergirl, comes Supergirl, and she just shows up, says, oh, Clark, I've been wanting to talk to you. Do you have a minute? And Lois is like, You're getting your, is this a news thing? Is she a cosplayer? And Clark's like, yes, she is a cosplayer. I am running the news for the cosplay circuit, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Get out of my apartment, Lois. Goodbye. And shoves her out the door, bringing Kara inside. And immediately Superman's just like, shut up and don't even talk. And he grabs her, and like in half a second they make their way downtown, and he's now in Superman gear. And he's just like, why are you trying to ruin my life? And she's like, it's just your secret identity. Who even cares? And it's like, I care deep. It's my life, Kara. What are you doing? Also, are you speaking English now? And she's like, yeah, that happened in my issue. Don't worry about it. Anyway, I met a guy who says that he can save Krypton. And Kal-El's like, Kara, Krypton is gone. We've talked about this. And it's like, yeah, but this guy says that he can go back and fix it. And she's literally pointing to him, and it's Hell just hovering over top and be like, hey, here I'm just going to go ahead and exposit about myself. I have more powers than you have. I can make things right. I was a scientist that worked with your father, and he took me in as if I was his own son. So I kind of feel like we're brothers, you and me, Kal-El. And Clark's like, okay, you're like the third person who has said that they're a long-lost Kryptonian, so I'm going to need a little bit more than that. And he's like, yeah, no problem. So your dad sent me off into space in what was essentially the prototype to your rocket. And I got too close to some crazy-ass stars, and those stars gave me way different powers than you have. But, like, I'm a lot more powerful, and now I've shown up here. And Clark's literally not even paying attention to Hell. He's turned away from him, turned back to Kara, be like, this guy's crazy. This guy's absolutely insane. And you're just listening to him? This is stupid. And Kara's like, okay, can you just let me have this? Can you please just hear him out? Because, like, if he can save Krypton, shouldn't we at least listen to him? And Hell, out of nowhere, just pulls out Superboy by the neck. And he's like, hey, as a show of how devoted to Krypton I am, I'm going to kill this Kryptonian clone. Because clones are really bad on Krypton. So I'm just going to snap his neck right now. And Clark is like, why do you think I would want that? No, please don't. And we cut over to this teenage girl who's getting a car with her dad, and they're just about to get the keys, and all of a sudden Hell and Superboy just go crashing into one of the cars because Superman just threw them halfway across the thing. And Kara's like, did you just put human lives in danger? And he's like, no, they landed exactly where I wanted them to, on top of the exploding cars. Now would you please keep an eye on Superboy while I take care of Hell? And she's like, fine, I'll make sure that nothing happens to him until you get back. He's like, no, nothing happens to him ever, Kara. For God's sakes, man. So she's protecting Superboy as Superman goes off and attacks Hell. And Hell's like, I came to you because Supergirl wanted me to, but I literally could kill you in an instant. And he's like, yeah, well, we'll see about that. He's like, you literally couldn't even take down the dragon that I sent, or at least you barely did. I'm way more powerful than you, man. I'm only keeping you alive out of respect for your father. And an explosion happens, and Supergirl's like, oh no, Clark, what's happened? And we see Clark come out of it being like, Kara, this is all your fault. You have disrespected me and my family. How dare you? And I will end your life if you step out of my way again. Do you understand that? You better listen to me from now on. And he just keeps threatening her. And turns out that's one of Hell's powers, where he makes her think that he was actually Clark. So now he's got them arguing with each other she's passed out, but she will be arguing with him. And then Hell just immediately lays a smackdown on Superman, being like, okay, I am not going to kill you right now, but I just want you to know, I totally could if you get in my way. So just please don't. And at this point, Superboy finally comes to, and he's got Hell in like a grapple. He's like, I don't know what's going on, but it stops now. And Hell's like, yeah, okay, kid, whatever. Throws Superboy away and starts like tearing him apart from the atomic level. And he's like, okay, here's the weird thing. You're not actually a clone. Now that I've looked a bit deeper into you, you're actually like half human, half Kryptonian, which is way worse in my eyes. But, yeah, Superman here doesn't want you dead. So here's the thing. I am going to let you both live so long as you don't stop me from restoring Krypton to its former glory. Okay? I'm going to go do that. Bye. And then he leaves. And then, issue ends. I mean, it was good. It was just like exposition fight scene issue. There wasn't really much else to that. I kind of liked the Supergirl stuff at the start, but even then there was like 3-4 pages of Lois Lane. It was all right. It wasn't. I think that the last issue of Supergirl was a better part of Hell on Earth, but this is okay, I guess. And the last issue of Superman had hell literally floating over top of them, and that just never got resolved. So, yeah, whatever. Overall, I'm going to give this one. I'll give it a 7 in that I do think art-wise and storytelling-wise it is doing a good job of setting up all these different lines, but it is still just not the best part of it so far. So we'll see if they can increase it. I think Superboy's up next again. We'll see. Red Lanterns number 14, written by Peter Milligan, art by Miguel Sepulveda. This is the next part of Rise of the Third Army, and Red Lanterns are all being attacked by the Third Army. Short and sweet, to the point, and they're like, okay, we figured out last issue, go for the eyes. That's what we gotta do, go for the eyes. And they're trying to fight off the Third Army. They're realizing that Third Army's trying to tear off their arms and then assimilate them. And Rancor, our one human Red Lantern, is like, hey, this was literally the girl we were trying to save. I don't think we should be killing her. That seems like a bad thing. And Atrocitus is like, well, it's going to kill you, so you need to kill it. Rip out its eyes. And it's like, but the eyes are the only part of it that still seem human? That seems weird to say, but human? And it's like, too bad. Get over it. Rip out its eyes. So Rancor uses his constructs to rip out her eyes, and it's just like, okay, well, I feel awful. Like, this isn't what I signed up. I don't want to do that. I was enraged against people who were like, actually bad to me, not just this vague badness. And immediately tries to come over as he's holding her eyes and just like, get over it, and squishes the eyes in his hand and says, all right, let's take one of these and we're going to bring it back to our planet and we're going to do some tests. And the one Red Lantern who was killed had her arm ripped off. The ring starts flying off to find a new host, but it doesn't even have energy to like get off the planet. So it's like, all right, well, our power is still pretty low because of the events of the previous arc. So we'll do what we can here. So they bring the body back to Yzmalt and they put it into the blood ocean. And Atrocitus is like, all right, show me what we're working with, Blood Ocean. And it pulls up like a little computer screen that he says magic, but like it's just a computer screen. And he's like, all right, running some tests on this. It's really going after organic material. It doesn't really care about inorganic material. And then I'm just going to ignore everything else the screen is saying. And, oh, hey, their skin is blue. You know who else's skin is blue? The Guardians. I'm willing to bet this is the Guardians' fault. And Atrocitus freaks out because, like, all right, here's what we're going to do. The rest of my Red Lanterns, you're all going to do like normal Red Lantern-y stuff. You're going to go after crimes of passion, crimes of rage, and, the normal things we said we've been doing. Meanwhile, we're going to go take on the Guardians. And at that point, the body of the Third Army member comes back to life in the Blood Ocean. It is severely mutated and malformed. And Atrocitus is like, well, my magic made it. My magic's got to kill it again. So he tries using the magic, and the beast keeps on coming after him. So he's like, hey, Rancor, could you maybe make like a construct to contain it? And he's like, I mean, I'll give it a shot. So he makes a big like diamond net construct that keeps it in place as Atrocitus blows it to smithereens again. And he's like, cool. So in order to take out the Third Army, that we still don't know is called the Third Army, but it's a synthetic army, we need our own synthetic army, something that they won't be able to transform. So I'm going to go back to my home world, says Atrocitus, where the Manhunters came and attacked. And we're going to go reactivate the Manhunters in the name of us. And everyone else just do whatever. But first off, Rancor, you need to get over the whole no-killing thing, because we really, really need you to kill. So please, you go down to Earth and you take care of Rancor's no-killing thing by getting him to kill the one person who actually made him a Red Lantern, the guy who killed his grandfather. And the cat, I'm blanking on its name. Oh, God. Dexter. That's it. Dexter hears that they're going to Earth, and he remembers their adventures against Midnighter and Stormwatch when Midnighter punched him in the face. So he's going to tag along, too, just to kick Midnighter's ass. So they start flying to Earth. Police is like, yeah, no, you're going to feel great after you kill the guy who killed your grandfather. And he's like, that still doesn't sound right. I still don't think I want to do that. And she's like, you see how you feel in the moment, big guy. And by the time they get to Earth, Dexter's gone. Like, he's just taken off for his own thing. And they get to Earth and look down at his hometown. And it's like, wow, it looks way smaller than I remember. And it's like, yeah, no, you're kind of a different person than you were when you left this town. You literally can never go home again. So then we cut over to Ryut, which is Atrocitus' home. And he gets there and he gets all pissed off because, of course, he's seeing the ruins of his old home. And he punches the ground. And as he punches the ground, out springs literally his entire city again. And he's like, well, this isn't right at all. And he sees like projections of all the people of his planet walking around. And he's like, this seems real. It's too real for hallucination. I don't know what's going on here. And then he looks up in the sky and all the manhunters are coming down again. He's like, oh God, it's this day again. It's happening again. And that's where we leave off. I like it. Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's straying from the Third Army bit, like a little. I know that these are things that probably have to get done for the sake of the plot, but it does seem to be like Red Lanterns was the only one that I felt like was actually very proactive in its like, okay, here's how we beat them, here's how we attack them, and they're discovering like how this stuff works. And they did that in the Blood Ocean as well, but this definitely feels like the side quest, because otherwise the next logical step would be all the Red Lanterns go and attack the Guardians, which obviously seems like suicide, but at the same point, their rage, it seems kind of right up their alley. So, I don't know. It's still, by far, I think, the closest that's just focusing on the Third Army stuff, but it does seem to also be taking its little detours here. Like, Rancor doesn't have to go back to her. Who cares if Rancor goes back? Who cares what Dexter's doing? Okay, I care about that. But regardless, I'm going to give this one... I'm going to give it a 7.5. I really do think that it's a solid next installment to this event, and is probably the most entertaining one out of all four of the main series of Green Lantern right now. Aquaman number 14, written by Geoff Johns, art by Pere Perez and Pete Woods. This is the prelude to Throne of Atlantis. So we open up in 1820, the Atlantic Sea, and there's just a whole bunch of, as far as I can tell, pirates, or maybe just sailors, out on the sea, and they see something moving in the water. They open up all their guns, their harpoons, whatever, and end up striking it down. And it looks like it is an Atlantean who looks a lot like Aquaman, but it's not, because it's 1820. And they haul him up and they string him up by his feet, and they're just like, hey, here's the deal. Like a week ago, we caught a sea hag, which is just a female Atlantean, and they tried to get it to perform some favors for the men, which she did not take kindly to, and so they killed her. But not before she took the captain's eye. So the captain obviously has a little bit of a grudge. And now they're going to kill the guy here because he has a little bit of a grudge. But before they can kill the guy, the crew look around the ship and they see that they are surrounded on all sides by an Atlantean army. So then we cut back to modern day, and Aquaman is sending a message to a bunch of fish that all make their way out. And we cut to the throne room, and it's going to be really difficult to talk about this in trying to keep it a secret, because throughout the entire issue it's all in shadow who this person is on the throne. But it is Aquaman's brother Orm, aka Ocean Master. We never actually get his name, but it's that. So I'm just going to call him Orm. Anyway, so apparently a boy named Garth was being harassed because he has purple eyes, and there's some sort of prophecy about a purple-eyed person bringing about the end of Atlantis. And Ocean Master's like, that's stupid. Make sure he's not harassed anymore. Send him on his way. And then the fish show up and deliver the message that Aquaman would like to speak to whoever this is on the throne. Again, Orm. So then we cut over to a prison in Louisiana, Belle Reve, and they have Black Manta there, and his helmet is all busted up, and 2 guards are like, this guy's, whatever, whatever he's here for, who cares, he's just a dude, like, we can go in and we can take care of him. And Amanda Waller wants him specifically for the Suicide Squad. So this one guy walks in and starts like antagonizing him, being like, so, Aquaman, huh? Like, is that guy really that big of a deal? And Black Manta puts his finger on his helmet, says the word Quemadura, and laser blast shoots out, distracting the guard long enough that Black Manta is straight up able to kill this guard. And while explaining that Aquaman is like nearly bulletproof. His muscle density is 10 times that of a human, and he can breathe underwater. So yeah, he is kind of that big of a deal. At that point, Amanda Waller shows up like, you goddamned idiots, taking care of him as if he was just a guy. What's the matter with you? And they go into the cell. The dude is dead. And Black Manta's like, yeah, I'm not going to join the Suicide Squad. I hope I made that clear. So then we cut back over to Aquaman, who is next to the shipwreck of this ship that we saw in the intro. And Orm shows up, and he's like, hey, I'm here. You're a long way from home. What's going on, bro? And he's just like, hey, so, Black Manta was hired to get the Atlantean artifacts, and just want to know if you know anything about that. And Orm's like, what's a Black Manta? I have no idea what you're talking about. And it's like, it's a treasure hunter. He's like, oh, cool. You think I wanted to, like, kill you guys for the artifact? Like, I would have just asked you for the artifacts, Arthur. I'm not going to try to kill you. Like, here, I'll tell you, I've always told you the truth. Just ask me, did I send Black Manta? It's like, did you send Black Manta? No, not at all. So, at that point, we cut back up to the surface in Norway, where Volko is trying to untangle a fishing line, and some guy runs up, and he's like, Volko, you gotta come see this. And it is a Atlantean, like, guard who is washed up dead on the sea. And it's like, oh, geez, okay, I gotta go. And he just dives into the water, and everyone's like, oh my god, he actually was Atlantean. That's crazy. So Aquaman and Orm keep talking, and Orm's just like, look, I wanted you to come back and be on the throne. I literally asked you to do that, but you wanted to stay up on the surface with your people. And I get it. You spent more time there. It's fine. I'm not pissed off about it. But I have then taken the throne, and I have tried to make Atlantis as good as it can be without you. And we can literally work together if you want. Like, if that's something you're up for, I'm totally down with it. But you've been kind of keeping away from Atlantis, and I requested that we were here at this shipwreck. Do you know why I requested that? Do you remember what happened to this ship? And they said, like, yeah, the men on the ship slaughtered the king and the queen of Atlantis. And it's like, our grandparents, mind you, our ancestors, sorry, great-grandfather. And he recalls, like, yeah, the Atlanteans, they sunk the ship, but they let all the sailors live, and they were all just treading water until one by one they all sank down to the bottom of the ocean. And it's like, okay, but do you remember what we did to the captain? And it's like, yeah, when the captain was about to sink, the Atlanteans came and they delivered him to the shore. And then when they got there, he pulled his knife again and threatened the Atlanteans and said, take him back to the water, because the captain always goes down with his ship. And then we see the skeleton of the captain there at the bottom of the shipwreck. And he's like, yeah, cool story, right? Not sure how it relates. But anyway, if I wanted to, we could literally destroy the entirety of the surface world. We could take out all their boats. But we're not doing that because we don't want to. We want to work with you, Arthur. You are my brother, and all I want for you is happiness. Okay? Cool? We good? Bye. And he leaves. So then we cut to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. And remember where we caused that cave-in that kept the trench down in the trench? We see that the scepter of the King of Atlantis from last arc is breaking it open. And it's like, all right, trench, come on out. And they all start making their way out. So, yeah, that's just, that's the prelude. That's setting it all up. Obviously, Orm, Ocean Master, not a chill guy, no matter how much he says he is. But, hey, whatever. I like it. I think it's a solid enough little setup here. It doesn't really do too much in terms of actual plot progression, but it sets up, all right, here's the threat. The trench is coming again, and also the scepter that can literally sink an entire city. Kind of a big deal. It sets up why Aquaman would be involved in it and how he came to the conclusion of Orm being involved. It's all around pretty good. The only thing that seems a little bit out of place right now is that Black Manta is just in prison, and he straight up says, like, and I got my own stuff going on. Doesn't really tie into the plot yet, but I'm sure we'll get there. So overall, I'm going to give this one an 8. I really do enjoy it. I think that's a solid setup for the book. Definitely feels a lot stronger than like the last few issues have, because those have just kind of felt a bit too rushed for me. This one takes its time, it slows it down, and says like, all right, here we go, we're doing an event now. I'm not sure if part 1 to this is in, like, after Prelude, the actual part 1 is in Aquaman, or if it's in Justice League, but we will see in one of those books how this event progresses. The Savage Hawkman, number 14, written by Rob Liefeld and Frank Tieri, art by Joe Bennett and Jack Jadson. This is the next part of Hawkman Wanted, which has been so confusing because technically the last part of this was Deathstroke, but in terms of the plot, it was Green Arrow. So whatever. Anyway, Hawkman's teaming up with Green Arrow at this point, and they're going to look for Shiera, who is the one who put out the hit on Hawkman. And so they bust into this warehouse where they've managed to track down a whole bunch of Hawk people at some Thanagarians. And they come in and just start knocking heads as Hawkman is just recounting, hey, in case you haven't read last issue or the issue before that, here is what's happening. So they start fighting against these guys, and they recognize that they are entirely outclassed in terms of tech, but Green Arrow just keeps on firing and electrocuting people and basically taking them all down. And at one point they pull out like what seems to be a distress signal sort of thing. Green Arrow shoots it before it can really go out, and Hawkman smashes up a generator that seemingly was powering a Stargate. Like, it just looks like a Stargate. It's a portal of some sort, but it was a Stargate. So at that point they string up one of the people who were guarding this place, and they're like, okay, so our goal right now to figure out is how many Hawk people are here on Earth, because clearly they had a portal open, so it was like a lot could come through, but also, where is Shiera? So they string up this guy and basically start interrogating him, and we see that they have him hung up by like just a single thread, and right underneath them are a bunch of Green Arrows, and they're just saying like, oh, we'll drop you on it, we're gonna do it. And he's like, fine, do it. I will not betray my people. I will not tell you where our queen is. And they're like, okay, cool, we're gonna do it then. And he's like, oh, okay, but hold on, like, all right, so there are a bunch of different nests, probably like 4 or 5. We only have enough supplies for like a couple weeks, so I don't know if maybe that can inform you as to how many people we have, but Shiera never stays at any of the nests for like more than a day, so I don't know where she is. And it's like, all right, well, we're going to steal your little distress signal thing and kind of reverse engineer it, and that's probably all we need. Anyway, bye. So they fly off, and the guy's like, wait, you're still dangling me over some arrows. Like, I'm going to die here. And it's just like, all right, well, die with honor. Peace. So they leave. And it turns out that the arrows are just holograms. They aren't real, which seems like you have actual arrows. You could have just used them and then moved them when you were anyway. So they fly off, and Green Arrow sets up Emma and Carter with Oliver Queen, them being different people. And at no point do they ever think, you look a lot like that Green Arrow guy, Oliver. They never even mention it. So regardless, they say like, yeah, okay, we tracked the signal back. They're in New York City. Here's the thing, though. I trust you, Hawkman. I trust that this has all just been some wacky misunderstanding and that you aren't actually this killer. If you, as long as you keep that up, you have the full support of Green Arrow and co. And Carter's like, yeah, cool, thanks, awesome. Also tell Green Arrow he's a pretty cool guy. And Oliver's like, I will. So we go back to Thanagar briefly, and whoever is currently sitting on the throne, they keep it a mystery, but it looks like it's the brother that was supposedly murdered. because he's all hooked up in life control stuff. Anyway, they tell him, like, hey, turns out that a couple of our guys have died, and they're still looking for Hawkman, and it's kind of getting a little bit messy down there. And the guy on the throne is like, all right, well, we're just going to change it from our Royal Army thing to a general bounty hunt. So put it out there that, put a number on Hawkman's head. He's going down. And then we see, as they're flying across from Seattle back to New York, that somehow Emma gets the news that there's a huge price on his head. So it's just like, okay, well, we need to lay low. I need to get you someplace safe, Emma, because you are definitely not okay hanging out with me anymore. And then remember how I said that the events of Green Arrow were the last issue? Right here, the entire events of the Deathstroke issue happen. So he meets up with Deathstroke, he takes some shots, they fight a little bit, and Deathstroke says, hey, I'm not here to collect the bounty, I just want to know what the heck is up with Nth Metal. And so Hawkman, in the issue itself, starts to explain it, but in here, they get interrupted by a bunch of bad guys who show up and say, ah, yes, we will take their armor. Mwahaha. So simultaneously, this issue ends at the exact same place where Deathstroke did, in the exact same spot as well. So gotta deduct some points for that. Honestly, the pacing on this just felt so weird in that, yes, we had that fight scene, but like we didn't learn anything from the interrogation scene. They literally just said, like, yeah, we're just gonna track your little distress signal thing and use that instead. And then the fact that the entire last 4 pages are just the exact same things that came out of the Deathstroke issue. Like, do you want us to read that issue? Why was it a tie-in? Why was it a tie-in placed before this point? I don't get it. It's so strange to me. Either way, I'm going to give this one like a... I'll give it a 5.5. And I only go that low because the art also isn't doing anything for me. Like, writing-wise, yeah, it's not great. It's a mess. The event and this issue, all of it's a mess. But this is particularly egregious in terms of you ended the issue with where a previous tie-in already covered. Like, what was the point of the tie? Why is this an event at all? Nothing in the event. The Green Arrow one is the only one that's been necessary. So, 5.5. Do better. All-Star Western number 14, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Moritat. This is, you guessed it, Black Diamond Probability, because last issue we left off with the gang being attacked by a bunch of crazies at Haley Circus, and the reveal that Mr. Hyde is totally a real thing and wants his Black Diamond back. And we open up in this issue with Mr. Hyde talking to Reginald, the guy that Dr. Jekyll hired to come to America, and basically saying, now, here's what I want, Reggie. I would like my Black Diamond, and I'd like some raw meat, in that order. And we get some narration boxes breaking down that the original story, the first draft, if you will, of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde showed that the formula had made its way to America. And then all of this stuff in this book happened. So take that however you will. And at this point, he's just talking to Reggie saying, like, okay, look, Jekyll only eats veggies. I need some meat in me. Just get me some meat. It doesn't have to be human, but I'd prefer it to be if you could. And Reggie's like, I'm not doing anything without Jekyll saying I should. And he's like, Reggie, why have you stuck around with me for this long? Do you have some hidden desire for Dr. Jekyll, or are you really just that attracted to my raw magnetism? And Reggie's like, let Dr. Jekyll take over, and then I'll talk. And he's like, all right, fine, whatever. Dr. Jekyll can come back. So Hyde transforms back into Jekyll, and Jekyll's like, oh, please tell me I didn't kill anybody. He's like, no, you ate someone's finger, though. And he's like, all right, well, that's not so bad. Anyway, what's going on? And it's like, all right, well, we figured out where the formula probably is, so we're just hunting down that right now. And Jekyll's like, I will help them in their search. And Reginald's like, maybe you shouldn't be in any sort of stressful situations, Doc. And Jekyll's like, I'm always angry. Not actually, but, you know. So they go and they talk, the gang talks to the basically snake oil salesmen down at the circus. And they're like, okay, question. Did you get something from Scotland recently? And he's like, yes, my nephew brought back something. It's like, cool. How many people did you sell that to? And he's like, well, we sold an entire case. We were going to make some more. I gave some as free samples to the workers here at the circus. But, yeah, no, are you telling me that's what caused all this? And like, yeah, that's exactly what we're saying. And we see the nephew is running away from the circus. He's trying to hide from them. And the guy is just like, yeah, no, hey, here's the formula back. We won't make another batch, I promise it. But Jesus, like, do you think it's all under control? And it's like, well, do you know who you sold it to? And he's like, well, I think the biggest batch was going to some gang down in Chinatown called the Golden Dragons. And they're like, all right, well, I guess we're going to Chinatown. So if you also remember last issue, Barbary Ghost, who was originally a backup story, is here in the main story. And she's down in Chinatown fighting the Golden Dragons, looking for her mother, who has been taken captive of some way. And they're just like, well, all right, let's start fighting. And Barbary Ghost is going through fighting, asking for where her mother is. And the gang basically says, like, you know what? Fine. We already sold her. We sold her to some rich white guy who lives down south. She's already on the train, but don't worry, we're going to kill you beforehand. And they proceed to, like, knock her on her ass, take a few cheap shots, and really beat her up quite a bit. And as they're about to deliver the finishing blow, Hex and Tallulah show up, hold guns to the guy's head, and then Barbary Ghost just kicks him in the face, knocking out a few teeth, and it's just like, well, thank you. That's the second time you've helped me tonight. And be like, oh, we're not done yet. Because it turns out that pretty much this entire town has gotten, like all of Chinatown has gotten their hands on this formula, and they're all a little bit crazy. So they all start attacking the trio. Trio fights back. They give a brief explanation as to what happened to make all these people crazy. Quote, a fella from Scotland came up with a drink that makes people crazy. That's really all they give into it. So they end up taking out the whole mob with just some swords and stuff. And the Barbary Ghost, who does give her full name at one point here, but I genuinely, Yan Mei Tsen, she's like, hey, you guys said you're bounty hunter. You find people? And they're like, usually like bad people. Also, we're kind of in the middle of something right now. And she's like, well, I've been searching for my mother. I have no idea how to find her. Can you help me? And they say, well, how much money you got? And it's like a couple hundred. And it's like, that's not enough. So we're already on a job. Sorry. But Tallulah's like, you know what? I kind of hate Gotham. I'm going to go and help her out. And Hex is like, you already took a job. What about the money? He's like, you can keep it. Like, whatever. I'll see you around. Hex gives him a kiss and then grabs onto Yan Mei and makes her way out of town. And we cut to Hex recounting the story back to Dr. Arkham. And he's giving Arkham a hard time for wearing a nightgown rather than a, normal pants. And they're just like, all right, well, we got the formula back, and it seems like everyone who drank it is either dead or in jail. So I think we can consider that a successful mission. And Arkham's like, yeah, I'll take it back to him in the morning. You get some rest. So he goes back to the place where Jekyll's staying, and it's like, he's asking for Reggie more specifically. He's like, Reggie, I have the formula. And as he walks in, we see that it is Mr. Hyde instead, but Arkham doesn't know Mr. Hyde, so it's like, oh, hello, Doctor. Who are you looking for? It's like, oh, we're looking for Reggie and or Dr. Jekyll, either of them available. It's like, oh, I believe that Reggie is currently indisposed at the moment. And it's like, okay, well, I can talk to him later. It's like, no. You would just leave it with me. I can take care of it. And it's like, no, I'd much rather give it to Reggie, considering I don't know who you are. And he's like, oh, I'm a very close friend of Dr. Jekyll's. He's like, right. And he's like, you said Reggie's in that room? I'll just go wake him up real quick. And he's like, all right, but you might have trouble waking him up. And we see that as he enters into the bathroom or the room where Reggie is, it's a bathroom. And Reggie is disemboweled and dead in a blood-filled bathtub. And as he's freaking out, we see Hyde come up behind being like, you know that formula? You know why it didn't work? Well, it didn't work because they didn't have a secret ingredient, something that I added myself. A little black diamond. Crazy how that makes things change. Hey, we got a black diamond. Woo, we did it. Black Diamond probability has been solved. Congratulations, everybody. I think it was good. I think it was a solid issue. It's weird. Like, the Barbary Ghost thing feels like it was supposed to spin off either into a new backup story or into just a new comic entirely. To the best of my knowledge, it did neither, as the backup story to this is still Tomahawk. So, yeah, I don't know. It's, that part felt a bit out of place, save for getting Tallulah out of the book, because they couldn't think of a better way, I guess. Despite the fact that I think before this arc started, Tallulah was like, I kind of want to leave. And then she stuck around for like no reason. So I think it's a solid issue, but I do think it does have a few flaws with it. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is a 6. It's fine. It's a fine issue, but it does have, like, the fact that it's just kind of all, I don't want to say wrapped up, but the fact that, you know, this stuff got sold in an entire case worth, and then it's like, it's probably everybody's dealt with, whatever. I understand they just kind of want to get to the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing, but it just felt a little bit lackluster to me. So 6 for this. We'll see how it continues next time. Batman Incorporated number 5, written by Grant Morrison, art by Chris Burnham. Last issue, we had the whole fight scene that lasted like the whole issue long, and then the reveal at the end that Damian cannot be Robin and cannot take on the role of Batman because Batman had a vision that Damian would literally cause the end of the world, or something like that. This issue picks up where all the cops have arrived, started taking in all of like these international contract killers that were all apprehended, and just like, what in the heck happened in there, Nightwing? And Nightwing's like, talk to Batman, but right now he's kind of dealing with a thing. So we see him and Jason Todd, who are talking to Damian, and Batman's like, Jason, just go for a minute, I just need to talk to my son. And he tells him exactly what he saw in his vision. And the entire issue is pretty much just that, where we see Damian as Batman. The city is on fire. He is being attacked by just a huge mob of people who were infected with the Joker virus. And we see him call in pretty much a drone that he grapples onto in order to make his way out of the city, while holding a baby, mind you. Because this baby is not infected with Joker virus or whatever. So they're thinking, hey, this might be the means to find a cure. So Batman flies himself and the baby out of what seems to be Gotham in general to the last safe haven, which is Arkham Asylum, where a whole bunch of people, and more specifically Commissioner Barbara Gordon, who is in a wheelchair, are all waiting, and they open up the doors just long enough for him to get inside. And then, they open up the doors waiting for him to get inside, but he crashes before he can, and they are extending out a fire truck so they can use the ladder to get him across this bridge that has been broken. And the whole crowd's rushing him. He manages to make the jump. Of course he does. And they bring the baby inside, and they're like, all right, cool. We can finally use this baby in order to get ourselves a cure. And Barbara lights up a cigarette, and they're like, that stuff will kill you. And he's like, yeah, if only, am I right? I can't seem to do anything to die in this hell of a world. So they explain how, Joker virus took over, blah, 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 and they're looking for the cure. So then we cut over to the president briefly of like the United States, who's like, we might have to nuke Gotham because it's crazy in there right now and nobody's answering our calls. So turns out there's this guy in Arkham named Jackanapes who I think has something to do with Joker, but regardless, he's a giant monkey who is also a molecular biologist, and he's the one who's working on a cure. And Jackanapes is like, Batman, you suck. This is the Joker's final thing. It's all just a big joke. And he's like, dude, just work on the cure, and then I will let you out of here. That's literally the deal. Just do it. And he's like, you don't understand. You fell for this punchline. Turns out the baby doesn't have any symptoms because it's just a carrier. It wasn't immune. You brought the virus in here to all of us. And so Batman immediately throws on a mask, starts making his way down to the room where the baby's being kept, along with Barbara Gordon. And we get some glimpses of what I can only assume happened in this timeline. there's this weird smiling dude who, like, takes in Damian after Batman himself dies. I don't know. This is before Flashpoint stuff. I don't know it. Anyway, he makes it to the room where Barbara and the baby are, and Barbara has snapped the baby's neck because she is infected with the virus, and she's like, please, kill me. Like, just don't let me cause any more damage. And he's like, oh, we can get through this, Barbara, we can. And she turns around, she's got like a grenade launcher in her hands, fires it at Batman. So he is gravely injured. And the president has already ordered a nuking of Gotham. So stealth fighter's on the way, and Batman's like, oh no, this sucks. Barbara, where'd you go? And Barbara's made her way out to the front gates again. Opens up the doors. All the infected have made their way inside. And so Batman's like, all right. Presses a button. Opens up all the doors inside the cells of Arkham. So now it's all the crazies versus all the infected. And he's like, well, this was it. This is how it always had to be. And we see the nuke being dropped. It goes off, and Gotham goes up completely in flames, everyone being incinerated. And Batman's like, I mean, that's probably how it's going to happen. That's the way I saw it happening. It might be a little bit different, but either way, it's a vision, and you are the cause of it. And Damian's like, no, it's a dream. Nobody knows the future. Why do you want me to go back to Mom? I don't want to do that. I want to stay here with you. And at that point, Batman gets a call over the radios from Night Squire, Batwing, a couple other people who have made their way to a homeless shelter on Crime Alley that has been taken over by Leviathan. It's being used as a base for them. And Batman's like, I didn't give you that target. Who gave you that target? It's a trap. Get out of there. And as they pull down one of the banners, they see it's loaded up with dynamite, and supposedly everyone in the room is dead. I don't think so, because Batwing's got his own book. But regardless, there's our cliffhanger. It doesn't do a lot to further the story of Batman Incorporated, but then again, it's all been part of Grant Morrison's whole big thing since like Final Crisis. So I know that this is just kind of an extra little thing on top of it that Morrison's like, yeah, no, I mean, you would know this if you read all this stuff beforehand. So I'm not opposed to it. I don't think it's poorly done, but it is kind of an issue for me of like, I know that we're reaching back into prior continuity, and it's just like, are we, like, I don't feel knowledgeable about it, and I don't think that this did a good job of informing me. So overall, I'd say it's like a 7. Yeah, that seems fair. I think 7's fine for this. It's not doing a whole lot. It's just kind of, you know, hey, here was this alternate timeline we showed once before. We're going to show it again, and we're going to show how it all ended. So it's interesting at the very least, and it sets up a good cliffhanger for next issue. So I'll give it a 7 and keep it at that. Batman the Dark Knight number 14, written by Gregg Hurwitz, art by David Finch. Last issue we left off with Batman getting out of his trap and Scarecrow coming in with a big old scythe, and they're going to face down. And this issue is just them facing down, at least for the first half. So he's standing there like, Batman, you still got my fear toxin in you. You're definitely not up to snuff. And he's like, shut up and let's do this. So they start to fight, and it's all out. Like, Batman takes a scythe to the chest, and it goes in, like, pretty deep. And so Batman pulls out his grappling gun, and he uses it as a gun. He fires the grappling gun through Scarecrow's lower jaw, and it gets lodged into, like, the ceiling. And so Batman takes the opportunity to then crawl his way out, because clearly he is not in a good place. And Scarecrow yanks it away. He pulls it out of his lower jaw. It's now just pulsating blood everywhere. And he goes to the room where he's keeping the little girl and all that. He goes and he grabs one more toxin, this one labeled super toxin. And as he hears the girl crying, she's like, please let me out. I'm scared to be alone. And he picks her up and makes his way out of the building. But before he can, there's a loose wire. It catches Scarecrow's pants on fire. He drops the girl, tells her to run, and then the fire grows and consumes until it gets down to his lab, and the whole place just explodes, seemingly taking Scarecrow with it. So then Batman, he's still got his scythe like lodged in his chest, and he's just hobbling down the street as a gang passes by, and they're like, dude, is that Batman? Dude, we could kill Batman. Let's do that. Let's kill Batman. So they go in to attack him with just a normal knife, and Robin shows up and just like, hey, I found Batman, Pennyworth. He's not in good shape. We got to get him home. So a few hours later, Batman's in bed. Damian's sitting by his side, and he's just like, hey, we were worried about your dad. Like, it was a lot going on, but you're here now. You're safe. And Bruce just looks over and says, like, I'm glad you're here, Damian. And Damian sheds a little tear. So then news crew and police are all at Scarecrow's lab, and they're just like, all right, well, we can't find any bodies or anything like that, but we do think that Scarecrow was the one behind this. 6-year-old girl was recovered. Police currently have her and are taking a statement, and yeah, all that. And then we see down in the basement of the place, Scarecrow is actually still alive, and he's just super pissed off. He's like, all right, you want to play Batman? Fine, let's play. So they take the statement from the little girl, and the girl basically doesn't know anything because she was kept in that room, but she does know, like, there was a map on the wall and some marks on it, and she thinks maybe if, like, she saw the map again, she'd be able to, like, remember where the marks were, but she doesn't know where the map was to specifically. So the police are like, all right, well, Scarecrow's still out there. Let's see what he's up to. And the girl's like, he's not all bad. Like, he's just got some issues. Like, he's messed up in the head, like that guy. And she just points over to Batman, who's just standing behind a filing cabinet, like, She's like, you better be careful, because now he's all angry. So we cut over to the Iceberg Casino, where Penguin's just intimidating some random guy, and Scarecrow steps in and is just like, hey, do you have a minute? And he's like, yeah, sure, just hold on a second. So they talk to Scarecrow, and whose still mouth is just, his lower jaw's just hanging off right now. And Penguin's like, you need to get that looked at, man. But Scarecrow's like, look, have you made the arrangements? And he's like, yeah, but I need to be paid first. So he pulls out this bag full of diamonds. And apparently he got it from a jeweler who had a phobia of scarecrows, and he lifted it off him. And Penguin's like, all right, well, yep, I hope there's extra in here to clean up the carpets after you leave. Jesus. So they say that he's almost finished building this thing that Scarecrow wants, and it'll be ready just in time for Christmas. So we see that it is basically a blimp. And as Christmas time rolls around, Scarecrow launches up the blimp, and he says over and over again, this is the way the world ends, not with a whimper, but with a bang. And he flies the blimp over the streets of Gotham during a Christmas parade. He spits out a bunch of gas that covers the streets, and now everyone is infected with some super fear toxin that causes things like people tearing their faces off, people eating the flesh of other people, throwing shopping carts. It's a bad time. Honestly, when this issue started, I thought it was the end of the arc. I thought it was just going to be the thing of, like, Scarecrow is not okay, and he has been left to die in his place. And then they just show that he's alive again, and he's still planning stuff. And I'm like, oh, all right, well, guess we're still going. I think that the pacing for the overall arc has felt weird. It felt so slow up to this point, but then this one just feels like it's like, nope, Scarecrow was defeated, then he got out and he made a blimp, and now he's gassing all of Gotham. It's like, okay, that's like a 3-issue thing in its own right. It just felt really fast compared to the pace they were going before, at least. I think I'd be more okay with it if, the last, what was it, been 4 issues have all been condensed into like 2. That seems more reasonable to me. But yeah, no, it's a fine issue. I don't have any like major problems with it. Pacing just feels weird in the larger sense. So overall, oh, and by the way, Scarecrow, disgusting. Like, they really focus on how his jaw is not okay. And it is effective. I will give them that. So overall, I'm going to give it an 8. I think that's a solid enough issue to deserve an 8. I couldn't really tell you exactly why not a 7.5 or an 8.5, but 8 just feels right for this, and just how gross it truly is. Talon number 2, written by James Tynion IV and Scott Snyder, art by Juan Jose Rip. Last issue we left off with ex-Talon Calvin Rose teaming up with Sebastian Clark, some random dude, to take down the Court of Owls, and this is their first big mission. So the place they're going to is the Orchard Hotel, which is this huge, extravagant hotel, and apparently deep in the heart of it is where the court keeps all of their assets, basically, all their fortune. So we see that already Calvin has managed to make his way inside. He's got Sebastian in his ear, and he's like, yep, we've been going over this for weeks. I'm here because this is where they keep the files. This is where they keep files on everybody, so I can delete my file, as well as the files of Casey and Sarah Washington, who are two people that I think we saw in the Zero issue, as people he very much cares about. And immediately they run into problems because there's like a laser grid. Of course there is. And he's dodging around it like, oh, I thought you said you had this under control, Sebastian. Get me out of there. So he dives out of the ventilation system and right in front of some guards. And Sebastian thought that the guards would be way far away because that's where their route takes them. But Calvin's like, no, sometimes people just do things to mix up the boredom. Like, they doubled back. You need to be ready for that. But he manages to inject them with some sedatives, knocks them out, and is ready to move on. And Sebastian's like, all right, go ahead and attach the device to the door, and I'll go ahead and start breaking through the lock, but this could take some time. And Calvin's like, screw that. One of these guards has a key. I'm just going to use the key. And Sebastian's like, you idiot. No, don't. And he goes in with the key. And it turns out that the key, if they used the device, they would have gotten in completely unnoticed. But now that they use the key, security's been activated. Like, they know someone went inside. And it's like, well, I thought you said, and it's like, I didn't expect you to go off book. I didn't think it'd be worth telling you not to use a key. So, anyway, they go inside, and he sees this just huge treasure trove with this giant tree in the middle. And apparently it's called Eden. Because, yeah, why not? And immediately Calvin has to hide because one of the old Talons, one of the ones who was brought back from the dead, is basically working security here. And he's got himself a little katana that he's using to keep track of. And Calvin uses a new sonic weapon that he had Sebastian build in order to redirect sound, like, on the other side of the room, so he's able to slip by unnoticed. So he makes his way up the tree, and they're looking for some sort of vault. Then they say, like, okay, well, this specific type of vault usually built into the building itself. That's why you've never seen them ever displayed anywhere. And he pulls up a rug and finds where the vault is. And Calvin, using his amazing knack for breaking open locks, he figures out how to do it. And inside is not the file system that he was expecting, but instead a golden mask. And he's like, what the hell is how is a golden mask useful to me? And a voice behind him, the Talon, speaks up saying, like, that's the mask of the Grandmasters. It doesn't belong to you. It is rightfully mine. And so he tackles Calvin. They get into a fight scene. Turns out this Talon's name is Benjamin Orchard, and he is the grandson of the man who was the Grandmaster when they built this hotel, of the Orchard Hotel. And he just willingly offers up his entire backstory of, like, yes, I didn't want to be part of the legacy, so I ran away to the circus, and then they thought I was a good fit to be a Talon, and so I was brought in, and it was only once I was given my task that I recognized my grandfather's voice, and he used me for like a year as a Talon, then he threw me away, and now I finally have a chance to prove myself as the guardian of Eden and Hotel Orchard. And he's like, what do you have to say to all that? Calvin Rose? And Calvin's like, hey, Sebastian, are those guards clear? And he's like, yeah, they're clear. It's like, all right, cool. Click. And he sets off an incendiary bomb that he apparently set up before even walking into the room. He's been doing this for 3 hours. And the entire plan was, once they got the files, they were going to light this fire that would get hot enough to melt all the gold so that there'd be no way for them to ever access this room again without demolishing the entire hotel and cracking it open that way. And Benjamin's like, no, this This is literally all I had, man. Come on. And Calvin's like, look, They treated you horribly. They were awful people. Your grandfather especially. Come help us. Come help us take down the rest of the Talons. And Sebastian's in his ears like, what are you doing? He's a killer, man. Screw him. Stop asking the bad guys to join us. And he's like, I have to give him a chance, Sebastian. It's the least I owe him. But Benjamin's like, no, my place is here. This is where I am meant to die. And Calvin's like, I'm not going to let you just die here. And he's like, well, then I'm going to fight you, and we'll both die in here. Calvin's like, fair enough. Have a good day, sir. And he leaves as we see the molten gold start dripping down onto Benjamin's head. And it covers him Game of Thrones style. So then we meet back up with Calvin and Sebastian arguing. And Sebastian's like, stop inviting bad people in here, okay? We're not doing that again. And Calvin's like, hey, I got a better idea. Why did you have me go for a gold mask instead of the files you told me we were going to get? And Sebastian's like, okay, yes, I lied to you. We weren't going for the files. I don't care about the gold mask, but like I wanted to take out Eden. I needed to take out the resources. And he recounts a story of how he was kind of just smoozing his way into these sort of positions to try to get into the Court of Owls. And finally, one time, he was invited into a secret back room where there was a young woman in like a gladiatorial pit who had her heart eaten out by a wild dog. And he was horrified, but he was forced to just sit there and grin and be like, haha, yeah, that's totally crazy, haha. And that scarred him. That's what scarred him enough to be like, we have to take away their assets. We have to make sure they can't do this stuff anymore. And Calvin's like, I get it. Don't ever lie to me again. Like, I will do this because it is the right thing to do, not because you think I need some sort of justification. All right? Let's get back at them already. And he makes the offhanded comment of like, what could they possibly throw at us that we haven't seen already? So then we see the court deep beneath Gotham. They're like, all right, well, we brought back all of the Talons who were good Talons, but it turns out we kept the ones that were not worthy of being revived. But now we've run out of options and we got to bring back one of them. And one of them is called the Gotham Butcher, aka Felix Harmon, who during his time as a Talon murdered 140 untargeted civilians. And they're like, well, bring him back and just kind of let him do whatever he wants. Who cares? So they bring him back and he's like, well, how would you like to kill again, Felix? And Felix is like, okay. And that's where we leave. I think this is a solid second issue. I think it sets up the thing of like, okay, we're still setting up stakes. We're setting up how the basic flow of the book is going to go, where it's going to be kind of like a heist mission sort of thing, while having some bigger fight scenes and targets as well in there. And they're setting up a good antagonist in terms of the Butcher. So yeah, I'm down with this book. I think that it is very well done. Looks great. Writes well. I don't really have any real major problems with it. It's still just finding its footing is the only thing that it's currently working through. So overall, I'm going to give this one, I'm going to give it an 8. I really do enjoy this book so far, and it is one of the better spin-offs I feel like so far. The Flash, number 14, written by Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato. Francis Manapul on the art as well. Last issue, we had Grodd getting Speed Force powers and the Guerrilla Army taking over Central City. Second verse, same as the first. We open up in East Africa many years ago, and the narration says, like, evolution takes a really long time. That's evolution doesn't go that quickly. And then we see a gorilla standing up in the rain and getting struck by lightning. It's like, okay, sometimes evolution moves a little bit faster. And then we cut to modern day. Grodd is able to keep up with Barry running at full speed. And it's like, okay, super intelligent, super strong, super fast gorilla with its only thing in mind being hunting me down. Seems a bit overkill to me, but whatever. So he's trying to lead Grodd into any sort of like trap he can figure out or something where he's able to take the lead. And Grodd just starts throwing cars at Barry that he's picking up on the way. And he looks like he crashes one down on Barry's head. Barry just phases through, punches Grodd in the face, and he's like, I still got a few tricks up my sleeve. But as he punches Grodd in the face, his costume, which is made out of Speed Force, literally starts shattering off his arm. And he's like, say what? So then we cut to the police department where Turbine and all the other people are. and Turbine's protecting them from one of the guerrilla ships from landing. And basically tells Patty and Barry's like adoptive father, I forget his name, basically saying like, okay, Gorilla City's starting to attack. He's after Flash's Speed Force, and the only way that we're Speed Force, and he briefly explains, is the thing that keeps time and space moving forward. So there's that. But they say like, we need to go find someone who can help him if they want to help save the Flash. So they're off doing their own thing. Meanwhile, Dr. Elias is being transported in an ambulance to Central City Hospital, and we see Daniel West finally making his way to Iris West's apartment, but she's not there. And of course, her letters have been just building up inside her mail slot. They've been like 3 months just collecting there. So Daniel's like, what in the heck is going on around here? We cut to one of the elder apes, one of the white apes, in a football field, who is using his mental abilities to project that Central City is nothing but a radioactive crater. But because all the other elders are dead, they're having to siphon human minds in order to do it. So they're filling up the football stadium with humans. And then we go to the rogues, who are still fighting off gorillas, and we're just like, hey, we kind of need an exit strategy. Let's work on that. And Captain Cold's like, I'll do it since I'm the leader. And Glider's like, I'm the leader though. And all the rest of the guys are like, oh my God, shut up. Who cares? Just come up with an exit strategy. But then they look over and see that the gorillas are taking busfuls of humans to the football stadium. And they're like, okay, nobody messes with our city but us. So let's figure out how to save them. And Glider's like, I'll figure out how to save them. And they're like, guys, I swear to God. So meanwhile, Flash is just trying to bind Grodd in some like barbed wire, seeing if that can keep him down for at least a second. And Grodd just goes on of like, you still think that you deserve to win? This is my right as king of Gorilla City, as the holder of the Speed Force. And Flash is like, psh, shut up. So Grodd busts out of the barbed wire, slams Flash down in the ground and says like, everything you have is now mine. It belongs to Grodd. And then we get some narration. So the gorilla got struck by the Speed Force way back. Turns out that he used his Speed Force abilities to meditate and travel through time because he knew it was important to maintaining like the balance. And he was going to try to talk to Barry at like this moment. But he arrived too soon, and he was the gorilla that in his dazed state attacked Barry when he went on like his safari thing when he was a kid. I think the thing said that was either Flash number 9 or number 12. Regardless, after that, the safari people bagged him up, sent him to the zoo, and ever since then he's been living in the Central City Zoo. And so Turbine and Patty walk into the zoo, and the gorilla starts talking, saying, I've waited so long for you. My name is Salivar. So then we go inside the Speed Force really quickly, and we just see that Iris and the bunch of other people who were trapped in there being chased by a woolly mammoth. They find a tank, and they're going to jump in it. So anyway, Grodd versus Flash. Flash is getting his costume knocked off by Flash with every punch. His mask is now completely off. And Turbine and Salivar and Patty all arrive. And they see Grodd taking a stop sign, and he's about to plunge it into the chest of Flash. And they're like, wait a minute. Oh no, Flash. And Salivar races over and jumps in the way. And it looks like the bar still gets into Barry's chest, but it goes through Salivar first, thus kind of possibly sparing his life. But the main thing coming out of this is that Patty sees the maskless Flash and says, oh my God, the Flash is Barry Allen. So, quite a bit happening in this issue. The page with the Rogues, the page with Dr. Elias, and the page in Speed Force all felt pretty who cares, especially the Speed Force one. Obviously, Daniel West, we're setting that up as like a more recurring character. He's going to be doing something. And Elias is somewhat important. The Rogues are the Rogues. But yeah, the Speed Force thing really did feel like, hey, just don't forget, there are still people in the Speed Force, which, did I need to remember that right now? I feel like that page would have been better devoted to explaining Salivar just a little bit more, because he kind of came out of nowhere, and now he's probably dead. So, a little bit of pacing issue on that. But regardless, I do think this was a solid entry. I think that it is, as much as I don't like to say it for the Flash, a little bit fast. Like, it felt like it was just kind of, because the entire issue, what really happened between Barry and Grodd in the A plot, it was just Grodd got the upper hand. That's it. That's the only thing that really changed. Probably could have expanded on that a little more, but it did a good job throughout either way. So I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7.5. I think it's still very well done, and I look forward to seeing how, I forget what the name of this arc is, Guerrilla Warfare continues on. The Fury of Firestorm, number 14, written and art by Dan Jurgens. Last issue we left off with Firestorm being attacked by some group of random super villains, and we saw that a shadowy man was ordering it to be done, and an even shadowier person was watching that man ordering it to be done. This issue picks up, and we immediately get the reveal of the first shadowy man. It turns out that the one who is ordering that Firestorm be attacked is Dr. Migala, who is the person that originally made Captain Atom, whose book just ended. So Dr. Migala's like, hey, okay, let me explain while I'm here. Captain Atom, super powerful, but he left because his book got canceled. So now I see that Firestorm's a thing who has similar-ish powers to Captain Atom, and I want to be in control of that because of some like weird morality shift I had in between the books. So let's work on that. Now, he should probably still be alive under that rubble, so be ready for him. And of course, Firestorm pops back out of the rubble, and all the supervillains are like, oh no, we'll just take him down again. Here we go. But now Firestorm has the upper hand, and he's like, all right, well, this one person I can't attack directly because they could just absorb my stuff, so I'm just going to turn the floor into a gas, and they'll just fall down to the basement. One of them is only good because they have armor, so I'm going to change that into a fluffy bunny suit. And one of them has telekinesis, where I'm just going to change all the rocks they're throwing at me to pillows. And at that point, the telekinesis one, who also has a little bit of telepathy, is like, wait a minute, I sense that you're actually two people in one body. To which point Firestorm's like, well, I'm going to go hit her and knock her lights out, so that way she doesn't sense that we're both in here. Whap. And at that point, Jason's like, did you just beat up a girl? And it's like, she literally dumped the building on us. I feel like I'm justified there. So at that point, they're like, all right, start up the machine. We've got them right where we want them. And they turn on this thing called a quantum field. And it starts tearing apart Firestorm into Ronnie and Jason. And Migala's like, yes, there are both of them. What marvelous things this may mean. And Jason tells Ronnie, like, hey, you need to, like, make a massive energy surge right now and blow up the machine. And they're like, well, what about the people? What about the building? And he's just like, screw it, do it. So he blows up the building. They make their escape. And they're like, that was incredibly painful. We got to go. So they make their way back home. And Migala's like, well, get a track on them. Let's see what's up. So they go back and, separate, go back and do their own things in their own life. And we see Migala's getting the backstory of like, oh, there are multiple Firestorms, and this is just one of many, and they're all playing different sides of the field and whatnot. And then we see Captain Atom on the moon is watching Migala say how he's the one who wants to take over Firestorm. So he's like, well, can't have you be doing that, you megalomaniacal dick. So then we cut to the next morning. General Eiling is there, and he is looking over the rubble of the building, and it's just like, so what were they doing here? And the little private's like, quantum stuff, sir. And it's like, okay, well, who did it? It's like, oh, well, reports are Firestorm. And it's like, all right, well, at least it wasn't. And then they look up, and there's Captain Atom, and it's like, crap, Captain Atom's back. Dang it, I hope I was done with him. So Ronnie overslept. He's late for school. He's got to turn in a report so that he's still on the football team. Jason stops him before he gets in the door, and they're like, hey, I also overslept. Like, that quantum field was nothing to mess around with. Also, you shouldn't be using the girl I like to write your reports. And he's like, shut up. I literally don't care. I just, like, who shut up. So at that point, they get to class. He turns in his report, and the girl seems more than happy to have helped. But yeah, regardless, next day, or not the next day, after school, Magala's putting forward like, all right, we found a way to finally capture him. We're going to send out that robot from the last issue, and he's going to just basically do the same thing again, but this time it'll work. So they send out the robot, and Jason gets home, and his dad is like talking on the phone to Ronnie's mom, seeming like they're planning a date. And Jason, he's feeling awful, not only because him and Ronnie might be pulling a Drake and Josh soon, but also that the quantum field was tearing them apart. And Ronnie's like, hey, dude, I feel it too. We got to deal with this as Firestorm. So they merge back together, they fly off, and immediately the robot just shows up and attacks them. And it's like, whatever, I'll just try blasting it again. And they're like, that didn't work the last time, Ronnie. Why would it work this time? So it's like, all right, well, we'll go toe to toe. And as they move in closer to it, a bunch of tendrils come out and start absorbing him into the robot itself, which is then like basically a jail cell that he's unable to change any part of the robot, so he can't escape. So then Magala's in a chair, and it's like, all right, activate the brain transfer. So you press a button, the big shoom happens, and Dr. Magala is now in control of the Firestorm body. And we're a bit unclear as to what happened to Jason and Ronnie's brains, if they're in Magala's body or not, but we'll see soon enough. But regardless, they cut back to Eiling, who is still, he's like, oh, yep, Captain Atom, of course you're here. And Captain Atom's like, well, I'm here to help, whether you like it or not. And that's where we leave off. So next issue, Captain Atom fighting Firestorm, but Firestorm's actually Magala, so this is just the sequel to Captain Atom now. Okay. I like the concepts of it, but I'm honestly, at this point, I think it was like 3 or 4 issues ago that they just decided like, yep, nope, we're just going to return Jason and Ronnie to their normal lives, and they're going to go to high school like normal. And I'm like, people died there. A lot of people that they were friends with died. I feel like you should not have them be in high school. I feel like they do kind of need to be on the out for a while. And I understand that first arc was kind of them doing that, but it just seems like they got into high school and are just like, oh, wow, Ronnie didn't write his report. That just happened way too quickly. So I kind of don't like that part of the story where it's, you know, oh, school troubles and girl troubles and are our parents going to be dating? It's like, you guys literally dealt with terrorism in a very bad way last time, and I feel like that should impact you a little bit more. But that's not fun, I guess. So, not much to be done there. Overall, though, I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 6. 6.5 almost, but it's not quite there. So, yeah, it's a fine, okay book, but it's not great. And it does definitely feel like it's not quite sure what it wants to do yet, but hopefully it'll find its footing. Teen Titans number 14, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Fabian Nicieza. Last issue we left off with Red Robin, Superboy, and Cassie all going to the archaeological dig site where the armor was found. They found a thing called the Mark of Trigon, and then we got a little last page tease of a guy named Kurt Lance being brought back by Amanda Waller to go get the Teen Titans alive. This issue picks up, so Red Robin's explaining what a Trigon is, basically saying like, oh, it's this super old god guy. He represents like the Trinity that is used in so many other mythologies. He was all 3 in 1. And he's super bad. And at that point, Superboy hears something, and he's like, hey, everyone shut up, something's coming. And it's Diesel in the god armor, along with an army of blood warriors that he managed to summon using the power of the armor. And it's like, okay, fight scene time. So I just want to point out one particular quote here from Diesel. Red Robin's telling him that we're going to kick his ass. And then Diesel says, don't you dare patronize me. And then tells his Blood Legion, kill them dead. The writing on this is incredible. So fight scene continues on, and Cassie is trying to get involved. And they're like, you don't have any powers? Please stop. And at that point, the Blood Army comes in, grabs her, and drags her away. And Red Robin's like, no, Cassie. So then we cut back to where the other Teen Titans are. And they're hanging out at a motel on the Jersey Turnpike. And Bunker and Flash are both pissed off that they're kind of stuck here for a while. And they're just like, all I want to do is just go back home, chill, hang out with Solstice. Sounds like a good time. Meanwhile, Solstice is getting out of the shower. She looks in the mirror and sees herself pre-transformation. She's like, well, that's not possible. What's going on here? And it turns out that it is Kurt. It's Lance. And he is... apparently his whole thing is that he's able to do a mental projection. He can't see her. He doesn't know where she is, but he can track down her mind and say, like, hey, I'm trying to help you. I can help give you your humanity back. All you have to do is make better choices. So anyway, Red Robin's still rushing in, trying to save Cassie. Superboy drags him out, and he's just like, hey, we'll get to her. We just got to be careful. And Red Robin's like, no, let me at him. Let me at him. And he's like, all right, I'm calm. Sorry, Jesus. So they do a scan down the one corridor to see if they see where Cassie is. They don't get any trace of her. She's way too deep. So then we see Cassie is being taken by Diesel and just like, hey, I'm about to take over the world, because that's just what the armor, it's been whispering to me, telling me its secrets, and you've always ignored the whispers, but I listen, and that's how I'm able to get like the Blood Army and stuff like that. I'm so much stronger than you. And Cassie's like, you're an idiot. I literally took on that armor to save your life out of love for you. Like, I have only ever wanted to protect you. I only have done this because I care about you. And he's like, you're lying. You took away the only thing that meant anything to me. And she's like, I thought I meant something to you. So at that point, she just puts out like, the only reason that I'm doing this right now is because I love you. Please surrender. And he's like, surrender? Oh, you're giving me a chance to surrender. I literally have all the power here. What could you possibly do against me? And she's like, I still have one last thing. And it turns out she kept the lariat, which is the weird tendril thing that just kind of obeys her demands or whatever. And Diesel backhands her and says, like, that's literally not going to hurt me. And she's like, well, I don't have it. All I'm going to do is tell the lariat to do something, and it will do it no matter what. It'll always finish its task, and I'm telling it to stop you. So, yeah, it wraps itself around his neck and starts draining him of power. So then we see Red Robin and Superboy making their way deep down, and they're like, hey, so we're still taking down the Blood Army, and are they, like, living things? Do we need to, like, worry about the fact we're killing them? And it's just like, no, I think they're just animated shells. And at that point, they all start liquefying and turning into just blood on the ground. And we see that Cassie has taken back control of the silent armor, and Diesel's like, no, it's meant for me. And she's like, no, it's meant for the one who deserves it. So, yeah, he's not doing so hot, and I'm pretty sure he's dead. So then Tim and Superboy are just waiting at the entrance to the cave, and they're like, oh, hey, Cassie, you're alive. And she's like, yeah, no, I'm here, let's go. It's like, no, hold on. You got your armor back. Diesel's not here. These things just liquefied. We're going to need a bit more than that. And Cassie's like, no, you don't trust me or any of us with even our name or your name. Why would I trust you with my own secrets? Just all I need from you guys is that the Titans keep the silent armor in check. That's your guys' goal now. So at that point, they all leave. The trio that was on the trip are very dour because they're like, we won, but at what cost? Meanwhile, the three who were in the motel were like, yes, finally back home. And Superboy's like, hey, I'm involved in my own book, Ravagers and Legion Lost. I gotta go do that. And Cassie's like, okay, well, we'll always have a place for you here. So she goes off. We see Solstice is met up by the mental projection of Kurt Lance again, who touches her and says that his ability is to manipulate the metagene in other people. So she turns back into her normal self ever so briefly, but then he is very quickly whisked away to somewhere else, which apparently is in Birds of Prey, which I don't remember. So hopefully that'll get explained next issue. And then we see Solstice coming in to talk to Red Robin about the stuff going on. Red Robin's like, I'm sorry, look, death of the family is going on over in Gotham. I got to go deal with that. So we'll talk about whatever you want when I get back, like tomorrow. Peace. So he flies off. Next day, every one of the Teen Titans who's still left in the tower, they're all having breakfast, and Bunker's like, you know, Cassie, if you want privacy, that's fine, but just remember, you don't have to do this stuff alone. And as he's about to start moralizing, there's a knock on the door, and there is a scarecrow-looking dummy of Red Robin that has been jokerized, like it has a big smile on it. And Cassie's like, uh-oh, I know what this means. Next issue, we're a Death of the Family tie-in. And yeah, that's exactly what happens. So, I like the scenes where Cassie is talking to Diesel. And everything outside of that felt superfluous. Like, it didn't feel like they even wanted to do this plot anymore. It felt like they just wanted to do a thing where it's like, okay, we got to explain a little bit as to how Cassie's powers work. But then once they got the explanation of the silent armor done, they're like, all right, now she can have it back. I don't even care anymore. Didn't really work for me, lo and behold. The fact that Superboy's just gone because he's involved in like 7 other books right now. Also Hell on Earth. Completely forgot about that one. Yeah, no, it's a bit too much. So overall, I'm going to say 6. And I think a lot of that is that I do enjoy the art style of it. But it does feel like it just has like 8 different things going on. And it doesn't know how to focus on any of them. So God only knows what we'll get out of the Death of the Family tie-in. Red Hood, that's a thing. Dear Lord, help us. I, Vampire number 14, written by Joshua Hale Fialkov, art by Andrea Sorrentino. This is the last issue that Sorrentino is doing the entirety of the art for, and I will get into that at the end. Anyway, last issue we had the entire gang meeting up at the cabin of Deborah Dancer because Andrew wanted to attack there. Sure, why not? And we get a little flashback here as to who Deborah was, and turns out that she was pretty much a lover of Andrew for a while. So getting into this scene, she has gotten a bit older, and the fight starts to break out, and Andrew's like, oh no, 3 of my exes. Sorry, girls, but none of you meant anything to me. And Mary's like, yeah, you're not good at the psychological aspect, Andrew. Don't try to pull that. And John's like, did you just call me one of your exes? I'm not one of your exes. So Andrew's just taunting them a little bit. And John's like, here's the thing, Andrew, you don't know anything about me. And Andrew's like, and he pulls out like a water balloon. And Andrew's like, holy water? Are you serious? And he's like, no, it's kerosene. And he throws it as Mary shoots a flaming arrow that just incinerates the both of them and sets the whole cabin up in flames. And they drag Deborah out, and they're like, she's like, no, my dog, Mishkin is in there. And we get a little breakdown as to how Mishkin was a man who fought alongside Andrew and Deborah, and he lost his mother to Mary, actually. And so they joined the fight in order to beat back the vampires. He died for Andrew's life, and the dog was named after him. But then the dog, having made its way out of the house that's on fire, comes out, and it seems like everything's fine. And Andrew comes out and just snaps the dog's neck because he needs a pick-me-up. So the rest of the group runs into the woods as Andrew feeds on the dog briefly. Tig comes rolling out of the fire like, jeez, this sucks. And Andrew brings the dog back to life now with, vampiric abilities, and says like, all right, now Mishkin, go find some food. And Mishkin runs into the woods, seemingly chasing after the gang, but it turns out it was all just some editing playfulness, and Mishkin actually attacks a hunter that's in the woods. And once Andrew arrives, he tells Mishkin to sit, and they start feeding on the hunter. So Deborah, John, and Mary are making their way in a car down the road and saying like, all right, well, they're not coming after us. Otherwise, they'd already be on top of us. So what are we doing? And we see that Andrew and them are literally already on top of them, but they're not attacking as of yet because they got to wait until the right moment to dash all of their dreams and hopes. So they make their way to Logan International Airport in Boston, and they fill in Deborah on the theory that in order to save Andrew, they have to kill the person who infected Andrew to begin with, who, again, I thought is common knowledge is Kane, but it doesn't seem like they're playing that, so maybe not. So at that point, Deborah's like, well, what do you need me for? Like, I'm just a person. I'm just a normal human. I've seen horrible things, yeah, but like, I don't know if I can help here. And they basically says, like, look, if you need to learn something about Andrew, Mary here is the one who is an expert on him. And Mary chimes up like, no, I love the man that I wanted him to be. You love the man that he was. That's why we need you. So, cutting into outside the Oblivion Bar in New York City, a magician makes his way inside. I don't think we get his name outright, but then Tig follows up behind, and the bouncer is like, hey, we'll let you in as a vampire, but if you eat a single person in there, you're out and you're dead. And she's like, that's racist, thinking that a vampire. Clearly, I'm not going to eat anybody. It's fine. So she makes her way in. The bartender gives her a hard time too. But then the magician says like, don't worry, she's here with me. So bartender says like, oh, hey, you want to see a magic trick? And he takes 2 shot glasses, put a napkin under one, and says, I'm going to move this napkin underneath the other shot glass without using my hands. And so she's like, all right, let's see it. And he's like, barkeep, could you move the napkin under for me? And she's like, that's cute. You want to get out of here? And he's like, are you serious? Like, that's all it took? I can do way more impressive things. And she's like, yeah, sure, let's go. So he admits as they're leaving, like, hey, like, just to be clear, I know you're a vampire. If you try to turn me, I will turn you into a toad. Like, I am an actual, like, magician. And she starts making out with him. And then Andrew comes up and just like, hey, your name is Charles Francis Thompson. I know everything about your past, but the main thing I know is that you have magical skills that are off the charts. Like Constantine would be scared of you if Constantine had any idea who you were, but you stay real low about it. I want to talk to you about the Avengers initiative. No. So he basically tells him, like, vampires have always done this thing where they just go out and make an army out of literally anybody they can come across. I'm doing something different. I'm going to make an army to take over the world, but I'm going to use only the strongest people because I can afford to be that selective. And I want you to be that general in my army as we take over the world. And he's like, I know you. You're Andrew Bennett. Everyone's been talking about you. Do I have to be a vampire? And he's like, yeah, that is kind of part of the deal. It's like, all right, well, if we're taking over the world, it looks like I'm not going to get laid tonight anyway. And Tig's like, oh yeah, don't worry. This is so much better than getting laid, as she bites into him and turns him into a vampire. So, Andrea Sorrentino on art is fantastic. And it is part of what made this series just so incredible to me. The mood that Sorrentino has put onto this book is incredible. And I don't know if anyone's really going to be able to imitate that moving forward, or even if they're going to try. But it is, hands down, just possibly the best art out of the entire New 52, and Sorrentino will be sorely missed off this book. In terms of this particular issue, it does feel like kind of the middle issue where we're just setting things up into places so that we can have a bigger fight later on. So nothing particularly incredible. I do love the kerosene moment. I think that was fantastic. But beyond that, it's just kind of a middle issue. So overall, I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7.5. I think it's very good. Obviously, the series has been off the charts. This particular issue is just kind of a passing by moment. It's nothing too incredible, but still always worth checking out. Justice League Dark number 14, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Graham Nolan. This is picking up right after the last issue where Zatanna and Timothy Hunter opened up the books of magic and just kind of teleported away. So we've got an A-plot and a B-plot. A-plot is that Colonel Trevor and all of Argus show up and they're like, all right, we've got all the villains from the last arc under control and we are trying to figure out what's going on with Zatanna and Tim Hunter. And we brought along our best doctor, Dr. John Perel, who was in one of the previous issues. And basically he's going to take a look at the books because he is the foremost expert on magic and technology and where they kind of get a bit fuzzy together. So he takes a look at the books and it's like, yeah, okay, the little like failsafe of only Timothy Hunter can use them seems to have been disabled, in that it's not going to shock me, but I'm still not able to like figure out what the books actually do. Also, these books aren't even magic. Like, they have no magic to them at all. These are 100% science. The only thing that's magic about them is they don't have a power source, which is probably where Timothy Hunter came in. Like, they're fueled from magic, but they're all tech. And he basically tells them straight up, like, I have no idea how any of this works, and I'm not even going to be able to figure it out within, like, years, probably. And Constantine's like, that's completely ridiculous. Years? Like, we could just have Madame Xanadu here look at her cards and tell you things in the future, and you're telling me it's going to take years? And they're just like, okay, look, I might have an idea. If we can manipulate it so that it seems like Timothy Hunter is using the books again, then maybe we can get it to do its thing again. But in order to do that, I'm going to need the absorption magic that Dr. Mist has. And Steve Trevor's immediately like, no, Dr. Mist is a criminal. He has been releasing state secrets to supervillains. We are not letting him get involved in this. And immediately Constantine's like, hey, we can put him on a leash. Deadman can literally possess him the whole time if it'll help. Let's just see if we can help. So Deadman's like, yeah, sure, I'll totally do it. And Trevor's like, all right, fine. But if he gets loose, you're dead, Deadman. And he's like, yeah, haha, funny. So the end of the issue is Constantine feeling bad that he had Zatanna and Timothy. He promised they'd be safe, and they weren't. And Xanadu's like, yeah, no, I also got Timothy involved. Like, we're both to blame here, but we'll go get him. And then Phantom Stranger shows up, and he's like, hey, hi, I'm not really here for the whole Zatanna thing. That's a you thing. But I'm here to tell you that there's a war coming. It says a war between the three. And it's a time that Constantine and co. has picked a side, as we see that Pandora is also nearby watching. So that's the A plot. The B plot is that Black Orchid, Frankenstein, and Amethyst are all bored after the fight. And they're just chilling out in front of the House of Mystery. And they're like, screw it. Let's go check out the house. Why not? Let's see what's up. And Frankenstein's like, I don't think that's a good idea, guys. And they're like, psh, you chicken Frankenstein? So they go into the house and they just start walking down the hallways. And they get into a room that seemingly has not been touched in like decades. It's just horribly dusty. No one's been in there. And Amethyst looks into the mirror and she sees that her two friends are both skeletons. And she's like, oh, it's a magic mirror. And Frankenstein's like, yeah, it's probably just a trick. It's whatever. But then skeletons start climbing out of the closets and under the beds and starts attacking them. So they're like, all right, well, this isn't a trick. Let's get out of this room. So they leave the room, but instead of ending back up in the hallway where they came from, they end up in a ballroom where a whole bunch of people are dancing and they're all wearing masks. And it's like, okay, yeah, we probably shouldn't have gone inside the house. Frankenstein, why didn't you stop us? And all the people are like, oh yes, hello everyone, our guests of honor are here. It's finally time for our lovely meal. And they all take off their masks, but it turns out they aren't like masquerade masks, they're full people masks, and it's all bug people underneath. So they start chasing them down to eat them, and they dive into another room. And as they get inside, there's like a giant Mayan stone head, and Black Orchid is just squaring up in front of it. And Amethyst is like, what are you doing? It's like, this thing is going to jump out and attack us in like 10 seconds. We all know that's going to happen, right? And then the head comes to life and she just decks it in the nose and be like, I told you, I said it was going to happen. So they keep on making their way through rooms. Like statues were attacking them. They just keep on moving through and trying to find a way out of the house entirely. Until finally they end up in a library. And this place doesn't seem to have anything attacking them. But as they look through some of the books in here, they're like, oh, hold on. Each of these books tells a story of like something that we encountered, which means there's probably enough rooms in this house for each of these books, which is way too many rooms. So Black Orchid just blows a hole in the wall and manages to make their way in a hallway. And they say, all right, everyone, peek into the room, see if it's the main entryway. And if it's not, don't go in. Stay in this hallway. So they each see some weird stuff in there. But then eventually Black Orchid makes her way into what seems to be Constantine's private office. And as he goes inside, he sees, the crazy red string corkboard of all the different plots going on in the New 52 right now. He's like, oh, what is Rot World? What's going on with Stormwatch? Justice League's doing some weird things. And he's got all this stuff on a corkboard. And sitting right on the desk is a file for Black Orchid. And we see the Black Orchid's real name is Alba Garcia. She was part of Project Ascension. She is Subject 28. And she's just sitting there like, Constantine, you son of a bitch. So she makes her way out. They finally find the stairs to go down. And, now they have more information. So all that was intercut with each other. But it was filler, obviously. We were just kind of padding, getting to the next thing that's going to happen, setting stuff up for next time. But it was entertaining. I did have fun with the B plot at the very least. And the A plot, it moved the plot forward. We're figuring out what we need to do here. So it's a good way to get the action in what otherwise would be just a talky issue. So yeah, I'm okay with it. Overall, I'll give it a 7. Mainly out of that corkboard scene, because they really take time to focus on every single aspect of it. Like, they're like, no, Constantine's playing a bigger game here. Or at least he's involved in pretty much every plot. So, interested in it. And also, one just little throwaway line here is Black Orchid saying, like, yeah, Andrew Bennett left the fight like 30 seconds after it was done. Which I just love that imagery of just like, this ain't my book, peace. And he just leaves. Fantastic. But still, give it like a 7. Phantom Lady and Dollman number 4, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Kat Staggs. This is the final issue of the miniseries, and we, of course, last issue had the duo fighting Funerella and her army of zombies. And this issue picks up with Phantom Lady and Dollman getting home, stripping down out of their outfits, and Phantom Lady just pouring herself a couple shots of vodka. And Dollman's like, okay, clearly you're upset about something. And she's like, why are we putting our lives at risk again? Like, neither of our power sets are really about direct confrontation. We're both better suited to sneaking around. And he's like, didn't you say, like, what would Batman do? And she's like, well, I changed my mind. We're not Batman. We're not able to, like, do that. We literally fought a zombie army. And Dollman's like, I know, isn't it awesome? We fought a zombie army. That's incredible. And she's like, no, look. We could easily, like, the whole reason that we were doing this was just to go after that one guy, Bender, and, like, get information on him to take him down. I did not sign up to be a superhero. And Dollman's like, but, like, being a superhero is kind of cool, right? And she's like, do you not see how many shots I'm pouring myself? And she's like, fair. All right. So what do you want to do? She's like, well, let's just go into the office, take what we need, and put it on, like, WikiLeaks or something. And he's like, that's not really admissible in court. Like, that's not a thing. It's like, fine. What if we just put up cameras and record him? And even if it's not admissible in court, like, nobody would want to do business with him because they'll think they're always being recorded. And he's like, all right, that could work. So yeah, let's go ahead and go for it. So she's like, perfect. All right. Yeah, I'm going to go take a shower first, though. And then there's this weird little section where Dollman's like, can I watch? And then they have a full panel of him just going like, please? And she's like, yeah, sure, whatever. You can be on the shampoo holder. And he's like, all right, sweet. She's like, no, I'm kidding. I'm not going to let you in the shower, you freaking pervert. And she just takes her panties and throws it at him. Which, this is the most horny book. Anyway, we cut over to downtown Metropolis where Bender's talking to Funerella saying like, hey, they're not dead. What's the deal? And Funerella's like, she cut off my arm. Like, that threw off my game. What do you want me to say? And he's like, oh, I thought you were a professional assassin. Funerella stands up and starts using her powers to, like, rot his desk and be like, that desk cost me $2,000. I hope you know you're going to replace that. And she's like, you paid too much for a desk. And he's like, all you superpowered creeps, you're all, honest to God, I think you all go a little bit crazy when you get superpowers. Even, like, the more normal ones, you're all losing a few IQ points. And we see that Funerella, she's, like, super pissed off, but she's getting a bit woozy. And it turns out that her drink that he gave her was has curare in it, which is a paralytic agent. And he's like, yeah, no, look, I know that I can't kill you. That's part of your power set. But I do have ways of dealing with you and dealing with your failure. And he says, do you remember the old nursery rhyme of Humpty Dumpty and not being able to be put back together again? As we see a group of men in hazmat suits with chainsaws walking in. And so, yeah, they're just chopping her up. And Phantom Lady and Dollman already have cameras set up, and they're watching all this happen. They're like, all right, we got him. All we got to do is put this online. So they're literally about to upload the footage when the lab is attacked by Bender and his men, who are all wearing like exosuits with a bunch of guns and explosives on it. And immediately we have Dollman saying like, oh, protect the laptop. We shouldn't have come back here. Oh, geez. And they all start just being blown apart. Like, they are hit on all sides and they're barely managing to stay alive. And Bender comes up being like, of course I would figure out who you were. How do you, like, you guys were so obvious. It was honestly embarrassing for you. And now I'm going to take care of this so that you and your Halloween costumes aren't going to put me out of business. And Phantom Lady gets up and she wraps them up with her dark powers and just like, you're a dick. You are the worst. You are literally a sociopath. And I genuinely cannot fathom a world where it's better to have you in it. And so she's like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop you. I'm not going to kill you, but I am going to stop you. And she uses her darkness powers to like put him into the dark for a few minutes. And that is enough to drive him insane enough that he goes essentially brain dead. And so she looks over at Dollman and she's like, oh no, Dane, wake up, please. I didn't mean to get you involved in all this. And so he wakes up because, of course, he's not dead. And it's just like, yeah, it's over. All right. So we just got to drop him off the police along with the evidence. And immediately Dane's like, we've got a lot of illegal equipment and they're going to want to come see the crime scene. So might not be able to do that. Also, he's brain dead now. To which point, then, they are approached by Homeland Security, who just shows up. Remember they were in like 3 issues ago? Uncle Sam and the Ray? Yeah, they're here now. And they're like, hey, we're here to help. We know that he's been a creep and we've been keeping an eye on you. We want you to help us fight all the things that even the president doesn't know about. And they just start laughing and they're like, you do understand how much of like nearly failures we are, right? And it's like, yes, but given the right training and such, we believe that you would be a valuable asset. So what do you say? And Dollman, I have a super high-tech lab that can maybe get you back to normal sized. We could use people like you. And so like, all right, so they look at each other and they're just saying like, so we got, yeah, why not? So at that point, Uncle Sammy does the I want you pose and he's like, and I want you to join us in defending the 21st century and I'm not taking no for an answer. And that's the end. So, yeah. Here's the thing. Funeral ended up being nothing. They decided that they don't want to be superheroes, and they were like, oh, we could just get footage of them. And then that works. Like, or at least it would have if it wasn't for the fact that they were superheroes to begin with. Like, I don't even know what they were trying to get at with this last issue. And then they became superheroes anyway. It's just all over the place. And I feel like this whole series has been as well. I don't know if it's bad. I don't think it really is a bad series, but it's so almost unfocused, I think is the way. And I think what it really comes down to is the fact that they didn't really ever take time with these characters to have them show that they know how to use their powers. They're just kind of like, hey, let's try this out. And they do it. And that could work, but with how much time is spent here, you would think, no, they probably should have like experimented a little bit. So overall, I can't justify giving this any higher than like a 6. Honestly, I think I'm going to lower it down to a 5.5 just because, I mean, the cover's literally Funerella in the final showdown, and they're just like, yeah, but like, no, she's not a part of this. She just died off screen, if she can even be considered dead. So I'm going to go 5.5. It's an interesting tie-in to the Ray and whatever it is Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti got planned with that, but spoiler alert, it ain't much. And that's it. That's all the comics came out from DC Comics this November 28th, 2012, which kind of directly leads me into a few things to talk about next week. So pretend like I kind of segued this better, and let's talk about the comics coming out next week. Next week we have December 5th, 2012, with 13 comics, including the number 15 issues of Batwing, Detective Comics, Action Comics, Green Arrow, Stormwatch, Animal Man, and Swamp Thing. Additionally, we have the number 7 issues of Earth 2, World's Finest, GI Combat, Dial H. We have the number 3 issue of The Phantom Stranger, and the reason I said that kind of leads me into this final section is we have the number 1 issue of The Human Bomb, which is the next miniseries focusing on an unknown hero, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti. So that's going to be spinning right out of the same sort of side of the universe where Phantom Lady and Dollman literally just wrapped up. Additionally, worth mentioning, GI Combat, last issue. That's the one, number 7. So we will get our final installation of Haunted Tank. And then at the end of the month, episode 69, nice, we will be covering the backups, which will cover the rest of the Unknown Soldier storyline. So be sure to check out all of that as it gets released. But hey, I'm pretty much done now, so let me go ahead and do my wrap-up stuff. You can hit us up on Twitter for whatever time it has left at DC Comics Podcast. That is all one word, at DC Comics Podcast. I'm going to start throwing out there, though, we have a Discord as well that is by far more used, and you can go ahead and find us on there. I'm pretty sure there's an invite link inside every episode description, but if there isn't, I'll be sure to start putting one now. So check out Discord in the description. Additionally, we have a Patreon that is Mild Fuzz TV, all one word, Mild Fuzz TV. Do it because we are technically a tax haven. That's not true. I don't know if I can get in legal trouble for saying that, but we're not. But we do still want your money, so that part is true. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to rate 5 stars, give it a thumbs up. I don't care. Recommend it to your mother. Do whatever. Doesn't make a difference to me. Thank you very much. Tune in next week. And as always, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.